The desert was silent, except for the dying crackle of radio static. Outpost Delta was gone. The last transmission from the 117th Battalion had ended with a scream and a roar of engines. Then, nothing. Command wrote them off as lost. The airspace was too hostile, too deep in enemy territory. No pilot would survive a run that far, but 3 hours later, radar picked up something impossible. A single aircraft, no call sign, no ID, flying straight into the dead zone. And then came the voice over the emergency frequency. Calm. Female. This is Havoc 1. Patch me to the survivors. The radio operator froze. Havoc 1? That call sign had been retired 6 years ago. The pilot it belonged to had died in combat. The desert night swallowed everything. Sound, hope, even the stars. The 117th Battalion had been cornered in a canyon called Rashir Gorge, a place so narrow and jagged the soldiers called it the throat. Once inside, there was no retreat. Lieutenant Mason's voice trembled through the radio. Command, this is Delta Team. We're surrounded. Ammo's dry. Air support requested. Static cut him off. Then, gunfire. And then silence. At Central Command, the screens dimmed one by one as heart rate trackers flatlined. The room was filled with the glow of failure, the kind that no one wanted to speak about. General Strauss looked down at the map. Pull back the search. They're gone, he ordered quietly. No pilot can reach them. We'd be sending another crew to die. The words hit the operators like bullets. They knew what it meant. When command said pull back, it wasn't strategy. It was surrender. But one operator didn't move. A young tech sergeant named Avery kept his headset on, listening to the ghostly static. Somewhere beneath the distortion, he heard it. Faint, almost impossible to catch. A heartbeat, then a whisper. Havoc 1 requesting line to survivors. Avery froze. His hands trembled as he adjusted the frequency. The signal wasn't bouncing off any known base. It came from above the canyon. He spoke carefully into the mic. Havoc 1, this is Central Command. Identify yourself. That call sign is decommissioned. The reply came with eerie calm. Didn't ask for permission, Command. I asked for coordinates. Her voice, calm, steady, clipped, didn't belong to a rookie. It belonged to someone who'd been there, who'd seen the edge and walked through it. Avery's throat went dry. Havoc 1. Pilot name? Major Alara Voss. Avery's eyes widened. Alara Voss had been dead for 6 years. Her A-10 Thunderbolt had gone down in the Afghan ranges during Operation Breakline. No body was ever recovered, and yet, somewhere in the void, her voice was alive, and she was flying straight into a canyon no one else would touch. Outside, radar picked up a single dot. Low, fast, defying every no-fly zone on the map. It was coming in from the east, skimming less than 50 feet above the sand. Target lock acquired, came her next transmission. Tell those soldiers to stay down. I'm about to wake hell. Avery's headset went silent again. And then, the desert exploded. At 02:43 hours, the desert night lit up like a second sunrise. The first blast ripped through the canyon wall, scattering rock and fire across the enemy's front line. Before the echoes even faded, the second strike landed dead center in their convoy. Trucks, fuel, and weapons vaporized in a single flash. The A-10 Thunderbolt, the Warthog, as the troops called it, roared so low the pressure cracked windshields and sent sand swirling like a storm. It shouldn't have been flying there. The radar was blind to that depth, and even drones couldn't navigate those sharp canyon turns without crashing. But whoever was in that cockpit wasn't flying by instruments. They were flying by instinct. Below, the soldiers who had accepted death seconds ago now lifted their heads in disbelief. Lieutenant Mason blinked through dust and blood, shouting over the chaos, "Who the hell is that?" Corporal Reyes grinned despite the shrapnel in his shoulder. "Doesn't matter. She's on our side." Through the smoke, the A-10 banked sharply, its titanium wings glinting against the moonlight. Then came the sound everyone knew, the bone-shaking, heart-stopping growl of the GAU-8 Avenger cannon. 700 rounds tore through the canyon in a matter of seconds. Enemy vehicles split open, their engines bursting into fireballs. Troops who had been seconds from breaching the last American position were now diving for cover. It was surgical, terrifying, perfect. Mason grabbed his radio again. "Command, we've got air support. I repeat, we've got air support." "She's static." The connection was fried again, but it didn't matter. Everyone on the ground was watching the same miracle unfold. The enemy's anti-air team tried to retaliate. A missile streaked upward, cutting a white arc through the smoke. For a second it looked like it would hit, but the Warthog snapped into a hard roll, dodging the shot by inches, then pulled into a near-vertical climb. A voice came over the open comms channel. Calm, deliberate, almost casual. "Missed me." Every surviving soldier froze. That voice, that tone. They'd heard it before, in old recordings, in whispered legends told over campfires. Lieutenant Mason muttered under his breath. "No, it can't be her." The A-10 curved back down, slower this time, hovering almost impossibly steady above the canyon. From that angle, they could see the call sign stenciled beneath the cockpit. Faded, but still there. Havoc 1, the same call sign listed as KIA 6 years ago. Reyes's eyes went wide. "Sir, that's Voss. Major Alara Voss." Nobody spoke. The legend herself, the one they said never missed a shot, never lost a squad, had returned from the dead, and she wasn't finished. "Ground team," her voice crackled again. "You've got 60 seconds to move north. I'll clear your exit." Mason didn't hesitate. "Move, everyone move now." They sprinted through the chaos, half limping, half carrying the wounded. Above them, the A-10 swooped again, unleashing one final barrage along the canyon walls. The explosions carved open a slope of shattered rock, just enough space for the trapped soldiers to climb through. As they reached the ridge, Mason turned back for one last look. The A-10 was hovering low, its engines rumbling like thunder. Then, as if sensing his gaze, the pilot tilted the wings, a salute. "Good luck." "Soldiers," came her final words. Havoc 1, signing off, and with that the plane banked west, disappearing into the rising smoke. When the evac choppers finally arrived an hour later, there was nothing left of the A-10. No radar trace, no visual contact, no wreckage. Just scorched earth and silence. The soldiers who survived told the same story, every detail, every sound, every second of that impossible rescue. And yet, when Central Command pulled the flight logs, there was no record of any active A-10 in the air that night. Every base had checked in, every pilot accounted for. But one thing didn't match. In the black box archives of a long-abandoned hangar, an old status light blinked for the first time in years. Call sign, Havoc 1, active mission. Status, incomplete. By sunrise, the 117th Battalion had been extracted, bruised, burned, and in utter disbelief. What was supposed to be another casualty list had turned into a miracle no one could explain. At Forward Operating Base Kestrel, intelligence officers pored over the data, flight logs, radar sweeps, satellite heat signatures. Nothing. No aircraft had been cleared to fly that corridor. No engine plume detected. No transponder ping. But the soldiers' helmet cams told a different story. Frame by frame, analysts watched the blurred shape of a low-flying A-10 tearing through the night. Call sign, Havoc 1, clearly visible. Major Keller, the lead investigator, leaned back in his chair. "This is impossible," he muttered. "That aircraft was destroyed. I signed the damn report myself." He remembered it vividly. 6 years ago, Major Alara Voss's A-10 had been shot down during a rescue op gone bad. Her body was never recovered. Command had written it off as a total loss, and yet the survivor's testimony was identical, word for word, same voice, same maneuvers, same name. Keller rubbed his temples. Ghost stories don't win wars, but he couldn't shake the unease building in his gut. Voss had been his commanding officer once, precise, fearless, and utterly devoted to her team. She'd earned her call sign, Havoc 1, by pulling off the impossible, threading an A-10 through an enemy stronghold to save trapped Rangers. And now, Somehow, history had repeated itself. Hours later, Keller walked down to the hangar. The place was quiet, forgotten. Rows of grounded aircraft sat under dusty tarps, their metal skins pitted and dull. Then he saw it. Far in the corner, half covered in shadow, sat an A-10 with faded markings. The serial number was nearly gone, the paint burned away, but the letters beneath the cockpit were still legible. Havoc 1. Keller froze. No way. The maintenance logs claimed the plane had been stripped for parts years ago, yet here it was, whole, intact, as if it had never left. He climbed the ladder and peered into the cockpit. Dust covered everything, except one thing, the throttle. It was warm. That same night, the survivors of Delta Outpost were brought in for debriefing. One by one, they recounted what they saw. Lieutenant Mason spoke first, his voice steady but eyes distant. We were done for. Then she came, the way she flew. Sir, I've never seen anyone handle a bird like that. Like she knew every rock in that canyon. Keller nodded slowly. You're sure it was Voss? Mason didn't hesitate. I heard her voice, sir. You don't forget that voice. Calm, clear, like the world wasn't ending around her. She called us by our old formation name, Echo Wolves. Nobody outside her unit knew that code. Keller leaned forward. Echo Wolves was disbanded after her crash. Exactly, Mason replied. That's why we knew it was her. The room went silent. Only the hum of the recorder filled the air. Finally, Keller spoke again. When she signed off, what did she say? Mason's gaze dropped. She said, Havoc 1, signing off. Then she saluted. Just like the last time I saw her. Before that op in Jalram. Keller's heart skipped. Jalram, the mission where Voss had gone down. For days, the investigation deepened. Command wanted answers, or at least a logical story to feed the press. But the deeper Keller dug, the less sense it made. Satellite imaging showed faint scorch marks along the canyon matching GAU-8 impact patterns, a firing sequence that only Voss had ever used. And deep within archived mission data, a sealed folder appeared under Classified Eyes Only. The encryption key, Voss's old personal code. When Keller finally broke it open, his screen filled with her voice, a flight log recording from 6 years ago. If anyone finds this, it means I didn't make it home. But if there's ever another unit out there trapped like we were, I'll find them. Somehow. Static. Then silence. The timestamp glowed faintly. June 4th, 2019, 02:43. AM. Keller blinked. The rescue at Delta Canyon had happened at exactly the same time, 6 years later to the minute. The next evening, Keller walked back to the hangar. This time, he wasn't alone. Mason and Reyes stood beside him, silent, eyes fixed on the same aircraft. Keller whispered, If this thing took off last night, it would have left a trace. Any trace. Reyes stepped forward. Sir, it did leave one. He held out a small, scorched piece of metal, a broken dog tag, pulled from the canyon floor. The name engraved on it was clear. Even under the soot, Voss, E.M. Maj, USAF. The 3 men stood there, the desert wind howling through the hangar doors. Keller finally said, almost to himself, she finished the mission. And for the first time in years, the old base alarm light flickered to life above the hangar. Red, steady, unyielding. Havoc 1. Active. Somewhere beyond the dunes, thunder rolled. Or maybe it was something else. The sound of engines, the next 48 hours turned the base into a storm of whispers. Word spread faster than any official report ever could that the ghost of Havoc 1 had returned. Every pilot in Kestrel's hangars had heard the story by now. Some laughed it off. Others, especially the older ones, said nothing, just stared at the horizon, lost in memory. Lieutenant Avery, a rookie flight officer, finally asked what everyone was thinking. Sir, if she's dead, then who's flying that A-10? No one had an answer. October 12th, 03 hours. A weather satellite picked up an unscheduled heat bloom over the northern ridges. Short, controlled, rhythmic. Not lightning. Not flares. Weapons discharge. Keller, now half awake at his desk, leaned toward the monitor. Patch me through to the tower. The operator hesitated. Sir, there's something else. We're getting a transmission on the emergency channel again. Keller's pulse jumped. Put it on speaker. For a moment, only static filled the room. Then in a faint, unmistakable voice. Havoc 1 to command. Survivors located. Requesting medical evac. Keller shot to his feet. Trace it. The operator's hands flew over the console. Signals bouncing on multiple relays. But it's coming from deep in Zone Delta. The same canyon. Keller stared at the screen, unblinking. That's impossible. Zone Delta had been sealed off since the attack. No patrols, no satellites, no drones were allowed near it. The ground itself was marked as unstable, full of wreckage and undetonated munitions. Still, the coordinates were clear. Someone, or something, was broadcasting from there. By dawn, Keller had assembled a small recon team. Mason, Reyes, and Avery volunteered without hesitation. They loaded into a low-visibility transport and took off under radio silence. The flight was quiet. Too quiet. The desert below looked like another planet, the scars of old battles etched into the earth like bones under skin. When they reached the canyon rim, Keller gave the order to descend. The aircraft hovered, dust swirling around them, no heat signatures, no life signs, and yet the air was thick with static, as if the frequency itself was alive. Then Avery's radio clicked, unprompted. Echo wolves. If you can hear me, follow the smoke. Mason's head snapped up. That's her. That's Voss. Below, a thin trail of smoke curled through the canyon floor. Faint, almost deliberate. They landed. The canyon was eerily quiet. The wreckage of old vehicles lay half buried in the sand, and the twisted skeleton of a downed aircraft jutted from the cliffside. Reyes brushed off the side of the wreck. The numbers were faded, but still legible. AF-0921, A-10C Warthog. That's her bird, Keller murmured. He climbed inside the cockpit. The seat was scorched, empty. The control panel shattered, but the data drive slot was clean, recently removed. Then, from deep within the canyon, came the faint hum of engines, not from above, from below. They scrambled to the edge. Beneath the cliff, hidden by shadows and sand, an underground hangar entrance was half buried, the steel doors dented and scorched. Avery whispered, "That's not on any map." Reyes grinned. "Yeah, and I'm guessing Command doesn't know about it either." They pried open the hatch and descended into darkness. Inside, the air was cold and electric. Emergency lights flickered to life as they moved deeper. Rows of maintenance equipment lined the walls, old but functional. And in the center of the chamber sat a flight console still powered on, its screen pulsing faintly. Keller approached. The monitor displayed only one file. Mission log. Havoc 1. Continuation. He hit play. Voss's voice filled the room. Calm. Focused. If this transmission activates, it means I'm not flying anymore. But that doesn't matter. The mission never ended. There are still soldiers out there. Still calls unanswered. And until every last one of them comes home, static swallowed the rest. But then, from somewhere deeper in the hangar, a sharp mechanical whine echoed. A hangar door shifted open, and through the dust, an unmistakable silhouette emerged. Another A-10, pristine, fully armed, painted with the same insignia, Havoc 1. Avery's breath caught. "Sir, to how? That model's been retired for years." Keller's hands trembled slightly as he stepped closer. "Unless she built it," Reyes frowned. "Built it? With what parts? Out here?" Keller looked back at the glowing mission log. "No, not her. Someone continued her work." The sudden screech of static ripped through their radios again. "Echo wolves," evac confirmed. "Mission complete." They froze. The signal was coming from inside the canyon, above them. They ran out, stumbling into the open. In the distance, The familiar roar of twin turbofans thundered through the air. The A-10, Havoc 1, rose over the canyon lip, sunlight flashing off its titanium frame. "No way," Reyes breathed. "We're standing in her hangar and she's up there." The radio clicked one last time. "Don't look for me, wolves. Just keep them safe. That's the job." Then silence. They stood there, staring until the jet disappeared beyond the dunes. When they finally returned to base, Keller ordered the entire mission classified. The official report read simply, "Signal anomaly detected. No aircraft found." But that night, as he sat alone in his office, Keller opened one final file from the black box drive they'd recovered from the wreck. The audio was distorted, faint, but the words were clear. "For those we couldn't save, I'll be in the sky." And in the distance, faint but rising, came the unmistakable growl of an A-10 cannon, fading into the wind. 3 weeks after the canyon incident, the warfront shifted. The maps changed. But the stories didn't. Every unit in the southern corridor whispered about the same thing. A lone aircraft that appeared when all seemed lost. They called it the Ghost in the Thunder enemy. Patrols reported it first and sudden. Surgical airstrikes with no radar signature. Convoys destroyed without warning. One survivor claimed he saw an American aircraft dive from the clouds, without flame, without light, and then vanish just as quickly. At first, command dismissed it as superstition. But then came the recordings. Radio intercepts captured fragments of an all-too-familiar voice. Calm, female, issuing coordinates to soldiers already assumed dead. Every time a squad was trapped, every time comms failed, she answered. "Havoc 1, this is Echo Wolf 2. Do you copy?" "Copy, Wolf 2. You're not dying today." And without fail, someone, something, cleared the skies for them. Major Keller had stopped sleeping. Every night, he reviewed new intel reports. Dozens of attacks, all with identical strike patterns, the same firing arcs, the same precision, the same impossible skill. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe it was an elite pilot copying her tactics. Maybe some classified Black Ops squadron had revived her legacy. But deep down, Keller knew better. Alara Voss wasn't just a pilot. She was the sky. And somehow, the sky wasn't done with them yet. One night, as another sandstorm tore through the base, Keller sat alone in the command room. The wind outside howled like distant engines. Then the power flickered. The monitors glitched. And for a brief, shattering instant, every screen in the control tower lit up with the same words. "Call sign Havoc 1. Active mission status. In progress." He rushed to the comms deck. "Who authorized this channel?" No response. Only static. Then, a heartbeat later, her voice. "Keller, you still don't believe in ghosts." His breath caught. "Voss?" The line cracked, heavy with interference. "They're sending your men into Redline Valley. It's a trap. Pull them back." Keller grabbed the radio. "Wait, where are you transmitting from?" No answer. Just one final sentence. Softer now. "Doesn't matter. Just get them home." Then silence. He didn't hesitate. Within minutes, he issued the abort order. 2 hours later, reconnaissance confirmed her warning. The valley was wired with anti-air batteries and buried IEDs. If the regiment had entered, none would have survived. When the report hit HQ, they asked how Keller knew. He didn't tell them the truth. He just said old intel resurfaced, but everyone at Kestrel knew the truth already. Weeks turned into months. The war finally slowed. The canyons, once echoing with gunfire, fell quiet again. Yet even in peace, the myth of Havoc 1 refused to fade. Every year, on the night of the Delta Canyon rescue, soldiers would gather by the airstrip. Some veterans, some new recruits who'd only heard the legend. They'd stand in silence, staring at the stars, waiting. Sometimes, the air was still. Sometimes they swore they heard engines in the distance, that low, unmistakable roar of an A-10 cutting through the wind. And sometimes, though no one could ever prove it, a shadow passed across the moon. A slow roll. A tilt of the wings, like a salute. Months later, a civilian salvage crew stumbled upon a small canyon far north of Kestrel. They were clearing old debris when one of them found a half-buried flight helmet. The visor was cracked, sand pouring through the seams. On the inside, someone had carved 2 words into the lining. Deep. Deliberate scratches made with a knife, still flying. When the team handed it over to the military archive, Keller made a single request, that it be displayed in the memorial wing under her name, but command refused. Officially, Alara Voss remained killed in action. Unofficially, though, even the generals looked at the skies differently now, because every so often, when a lost patrol cried for help, far out, beyond radar and reason, a single voice still broke through the static. Havoc 1, inbound, and wherever that voice came from, death waited for no one. They called her a ghost, but ghosts don't bleed. Ghosts don't fly into hell to pull strangers home, Major Alara. Voss was more than a legend. She was the promise every soldier whispered, when they thought no one was coming, the sound of hope screaming through the night sky, and as long as that sound still echoed, somewhere beyond the horizon, Havoc 1 was never gone.